NPC hunting. Pirates, Martians, and UNN. It's core to the progression, but a lot of people aren't sure where to start. What do they like? What do you need? What's the best way to do it? Do you need a railgun? And without those answers, it's easy to hesitate. So let's shine some light on this, on the whole process, start to finish. How to hunt NPCs on Draconis Expanse. To hunt NPCs, you need a good ship. This is the Belta Cruiser. You might have noticed it has a few similarities to the ship in the intro. That's no coincidence. This hull is the predecessor to that one, with just a bit of tweaking. This may not be the prettiest ship, or even the most lethal, but it is cheap, it is redundant, and it's tough. I originally intended to go into detail about the various design decisions and how they relate to hunting, but I decided that wasn't a good use of our time. Instead, I encourage you to examine the blueprint in Creative. The only thing you absolutely need to have to match what we're going to be doing today is the script, which is linked in the description along with the ship itself. It provides a radar HUD, speed match, gyro stabilization, and most importantly, a subsystem targeting fixed railgun aimbot. You don't need any of these things to successfully hunt on Draconis Expanse, but I believe that fun gameplay comes from doing what only you can do, not monotonous tasks that are easily automated. With this ship, or something similar, you should be able to go from nothing but NPC store-bought PDC chips and belter components to the first milestone in one day, a mounted Zakosatara railgun turret. And I mean it. In the process of filming this, I collected a minimum of 26 upgraded belter component scrap an hour, sometimes better. Now, I'm going to show you exactly what I did and what I used. So let's get started. Alright, this is a printed and stocked copy of the ship. Watch out. When you print this or any other ship, the server removes torpedo launchers from the projection. You will need to manually add them back, and you should want one for extra radar range. Projections also print with all blocks turned off. The script does have a command to help turn everything on. Don't forget to configure new torpedo launchers for subsystem targeting. Set the subsystem to power, and enable the subsystem targeting toggle further down. In our case, this is required for the aimbot to work. Make sure to read the script header and ensure things are set up properly, especially if you're using it with a different ship. The aimbot has one other requirement. The torpedo launcher must be loaded. The aimbot aims at the sub-target of the torpedo launcher, but Weapon Core will not bother to calculate the sub-target if it knows it isn't even loaded. So make sure you've got a launcher and load it with a torpedo. Do not fire it if you want the aimbot to work. So, we've got ammo, parts, tools, and all the keybinds are like they should be. Scripts are all set up. You can see some text on the screen to the right. We've got the HUD LCD mod loaded via plugin loader, and the radar in the script will work with that, so we can see some stuff on my HUD itself. It's not a bad idea to have a tender ship or forward operating base of some kind near the instance you're going to hunt in, something that can refuel, rearm, and repair your hunter ship if it's necessary. I haven't brought one today, but it's something to keep in mind. Entering the Jupiter instance, the first thing I'm going to do is relog. Seamless and Nexus are great, but I think it doesn't hurt to minimize any possible source of sync issues if you have the luxury to do so. The reason we're here is, of course, the pirates. Pirates are the weakest NPCs you can fight, with fragile ships armed with only a few flaks and ramshackle torpedoes. Our PDC net is so much more powerful that if you fall into PDC range, it should wreck them in seconds, making mistakes here very forgiving. But that's not good for farming, because we would still take damage, and the things we want to salvage would be mostly destroyed. For this reason, even if it's feasible to hunt NPCs without a railgun, it's best if we have one. Unfortunately for us, we do. The fixed Zakosatara railgun. The fixed Zako only requires belter components, so it's cheap. The downside is accuracy. While it is nominally the same as the turret, the reality is that gyros or a CTC controller introduce additional error, let alone manual aim. We're going to minimize this by getting as close as we safely can to our targets, but we'll want to upgrade to a turreted railgun as soon as possible. Alright, we have our first pirate. This is a Billy OT, which actually isn't that bad of an NPC for a pirate. They're all pretty fragile still and have a tendency to destroy the stuff we want. And obviously we're going to have issues with our fixed rail wanting to do just that. We're speed matched to the target, which is what that blue panel at the back is indicating. It's a light. And we are just going to roll back up to them, get close as we're comfortable with, in this case about 4 kilometers. And then we just start aimbotting. And slowly but surely we will plink it out. Now what's going to happen in this specific case, our first shot is going to blow out the controller block, which is not a super reliable thing, but if you do that, it can cause the ships to decelerate to a complete stop. I don't rely on this personally because often it doesn't work if the conveyor network gets messed up and so forth. But if it happens, as it happens this time, then all the better, I suppose. It makes removes a variable from the equation that could otherwise complicate your life, I suppose. But either way, we are going to have to keep railgunning this for a bit to destroy all the power systems so the guns won't shoot us when we go up to steal their precious belter components. So let's fast forward a bit. Alright, the pirate is completely powerless. It can take a bit because of the railgun and the way it works. You'll notice I've deselected the target. This doesn't matter so much now because of the requirements of the aimbot, making it pointless, but later on, when we have a turreted railgun, that's going to be helpful. I'll talk about it more then. Right now I'm approaching, speed matched. It doesn't make much difference because the ship is at rest, but that's not something we can rely on, so I'm going to act like it's speed and do all the techniques like I would do them even if we were both ships were at speed, so that you know how to handle that if you don't already. So when you get out of the cockpit at speed, you're auto dampening by default in Space Engineers. Get out there, you're looking at your target, which is that other wreck. You turn off your dampeners and then you thrust forward a bit, so you coast over. And then once you get right up on it, you aim at it and then Control Z to auto dampen to it, and then you're good. Do the same to get back. You want to grab scrap fast and you don't care about nothing else, you can grind it down like this, and you grind the scrap out and nothing more, and then you swap to the welder, you weld for a moment, and boom, the only thing in your inventory is going to be the scrap. It's not good for getting the PDC chips, but it lets you get the one thing you cannot buy very fast. So you can run around a wreck and rip the tech out of various tech blocks like PDCs and get right back to your ship as fast as possible if you need to. But for things like these cargo containers or other shit, that's why I've got the grinders on the ship. So you can run back to the ship, or rather you just don't leave your ship, depending. It's all about how much time you have, but then you can just get over there and grind directly on it. And even if you're at speed, no big deal. We are using the speed match, so even if both of these ships are going 300 meters a second, in fact I believe at some point in here there's a bit of velocity, and it doesn't matter because of the speed match. It's not possible for the wreck to start drifting away and us have to chase it. That doesn't happen. It can happen with little pieces breaking off. Sometimes you'll have to chase a flak, but by and large saves you a lot of trouble. So you bring your ship in with the grinders on it like this, you don't have to worry about getting the stuff out of cargo containers, or finding them for that matter. You can just chew big old hunks out of things and get everything you want to get, because the cargo containers can have more tech in them. They can have like LiDAR components, they can have all kind of goodies, especially at the inner planets. And the torpedo launchers have torpedoes in them. And because they take a full inventory on a player, can't have a tool, it's impossible to grind them out while the ship's moving without a ship grinder. Not unless you want them to fall into space and get lost. So ship grinder, hugely helpful, especially later when you're going to be getting killing inners, and they have these expensive 220 torpedoes in there, every one of them. So you're going to be picking up 1 to 4, at least one, free 220 torpedo off of every single inner you kill. Hugely helpful. But that's that for this one. I think we've demonstrated everything we're going to get off this guy. So I'm going to skip to the next one, which will be a pirate at speed. Alright, this is pirate number 2, a King Arnold. King Arnold is a relatively sturdy one, so we should get some decent loot here. Same as usual, we speed match, which is a manually activated process, by the way. Matches me to whatever I have selected in Weapon Core. I've got my dampeners off, so I'm just coasting toward them, and when I get closer to the range I want, I'm going to turn the dampeners on. But it's possible to make mistakes. You do it too sloppy, you mess up, you get in range, then this happens. Now, I was kind of fortunate. I only got dinged by a couple of those, and it didn't damage anything functional. Part of that was trajectory limits. That's a complicated topic. But it goes to show you do have to be careful when you're getting super close like we are to make the railgun not garbage, that you don't want to get within actual PDC range, because then they're going to tear your ass up. And that's where thrust comes back into the picture too. You want to have really good thrust on your ship, so if you make mistakes like that, you can get out of there as fast as possible and take minimum damage. But other than that little oopsie there, this is business as usual, and we are going to have to plow all the power out. The reason, so I guess I'll take a moment and talk about the deselection thing. So one of the issues that makes things take so long here is there are a bunch of batteries in these NPCs, but the batteries are not turned on. They don't even power the enemy ship. But when you are targeting power, if you have the target in focus, then your guns will waste time shooting these inactive batteries. This is unfortunately not something we can avoid with the aimbot, because the aimbot is slaving the railgun to the torpedo launcher, and torpedo launchers will not even target something if it's deselected. However, once we get a turret, that's going to change. You'll be able to deselect a target, and your railgun will only shoot the power generators that matter, and that'll save a bunch of time. But that's for later. Let me fast forward a bit, get us to the meat of this one. Alright. With the pirate disabled once again, we can head on over. Still speed matched, and it's much more apparent here the benefits of that. The wreck is drifting at about 300 something meters a second, no problem. We are dampening relative to it rather than to the global frame, so just fly over as though none of us were moving that fast, no big deal. And then we're going to repeat the process that we went through with the last one. and get that stuff. It's important to be careful as you approach in the ship. Oh, looks like we're going to fly out first. As before, when you get out of the cockpit, you should be auto-dampened to the ship. If you aren't, you can quickly fix that with Control-Z. You get out there, turn your thrusters, turn your dampeners off, coast over, and then Control-Z onto the target ship once you get close enough. And that should let you explore the wreck at your leisure. Same process I showed before. Grind it down, weld it, get the scrap out. I want to be clear, when I do this, I'm not saying that you should use this technique, that it's better than the ship grinder. I'm doing it each time to demonstrate it. I typically would not actually get out of my ship at all and just use the ship grinders first and foremost. But not every ship has ship grinders, or like you might not be using a ship, you might not be using my blueprint, or you might not want to spend the belter components for that. And if you don't have them set up for that, or you're not, for whatever reason, you're not, I'm making sure you know the other process. But yeah, I absolutely and firmly believe that speed match makes a huge difference in hunting efficiency. I don't know that I specifically said it earlier. I don't think I did. There is, like, oh, look at that. So that is one thing about it. You can move really fast, and you see that this NPC showed up while we were trying to do that. This won't be as much of an issue later. Because of the issues with the railgun that I've already gone over, it's much more possible for enemy NPCs to give you new spawns that try to attack you while you're already focused on a harvest, before you get a chance to really harvest a target. And that's just a nuisance you'll have to deal with these more limited tools at your disposal. Once we get the mounted railgun, we're going to be able to do something about that, because it will be a little more accurate and it won't target things we don't need to target, like batteries, if we deselect the target. And of course, once you have one turret, you could even go so far as to get another turret and put them both on the same ship, stagger them, have twice the speed of disabling functionally. But yeah, that's basically the process. We just keep doing this, you know. We just keep you go out, get the pirates, speed match, or if you're not using a script like that, you can just manually maintain distance, and then you plink out the power, whether it be with something like this aimbot, manual aim, or even the turret. Then you go in, once it's dead, you take all the stuff. Rinse and repeat. In my experience, NPC spawns are a minimum of 10 minutes apart, and rarely more than that, like 12 at most. So, as a general rule, you should be able to take out and harvest a pirate every, let's say, 13 minutes. And as you've seen, I've gotten like two, I think it was, at least 2 flax off of each of the pirates that I've harvested so far. So 10 scrap, let's say. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned getting 26 scrap an hour, and that was a real lowball number. I don't want to say something like, oh, you should be able to get a railgun every hour or something crazy like that. But the reality is that, as long as you get even one flak off of each ship, that would give you, what is it, 30 scrap an hour. If you just get one flak off of each ship and you kill a ship every 10 minutes. You don't always get to harvest ships, as you've seen. Like, I had to jump off of that one really fast. But if you do manage to harvest a ship, at least every other... I mean, you see where we're going with this. And you need 100 scrap, and then you're set. You got your railgun. And that's really the biggest hurdle in this whole progression currently, in my opinion, is getting that first turreted railgun, because later on, like if you're looking to get, OPA PDCs or Narrowmans or Redfields from the inners, you don't have to collect such a large number to get an actual upgrade, because it's a 2-to-1 ratio, scrap to tech, and you get, you harvest a wreck, you scrap off of 2 PDCs. That's a PDC for you. And the same at the very end of all this process, when if you're taking out capital ships like the Sirocco or the Leonidas, the same applies there. 2 railguns equals 1 railgun. So you just got to get over this hurdle at the beginning, this nuisance of getting your first turreted rail, and it's only uphill from there. You get a solid grasp of your tactics of choice, be it speed match or otherwise. You don't want to get into PDC range, and you want to plank their power out with your railgun. And that's the process that'll carry you all the way through the game to the capitals at the Siroccos and Leos at Mars or Earth. So, I'm going to go ahead and skip to show you one other thing that you might run into here at Jupiter, because all these pirate ships are kind of samey. The only thing that's different is the stations. So I'm going to show you those now. Alright, this is the TIH to Pirate Station. It's one of the 2 stations that you can run into at Jupiter. You gotta be pretty close to Jupiter to get these. Like, ideally under 400 kilometers away, maybe. This one's pretty rare, but it's a really good find. You come in and you kill it, and what you're going to get is a crap load of loot, because it's got a lot of flaks, and because they're all over, when you railgun the power out, you don't generally mess them up at all. It's got a lot of flaks, so that's a lot of scrap right there. Then it's got a lot of cargo containers. In the central spire, there's a bunch of large industrial cargoes. And there's a couple small ones around. There's also some other loot. There's like compost and saplings and things, if you care about that, if you're a cultist. But, yeah, no, so, and because it's a station, it doesn't move. So you can just go to right outside a PDC range and just kill it. But yeah, then this is where your ship grinders excel. You come in, you can just chew it up, get a whole lot of stuff. The 2 times I farmed this while making this video, I came away with enough scrap for a railgun from just 2 of these stations. Now there's a bit of variability to that, because some of that comes from cargo containers. But it just goes to show that if you get your hands on a couple of these, you're going to be set. They are kind of rare, though. You don't run into them very often. There's only one other station that I've seen, the Bonnie. I'm not actually going to bother to show it at this point. I don't really think it's going to give us any new lessons. I'll only say that it only has Voltaires. And a couple cargoes. It is good for LiDAR components if you want those, I guess. Otherwise, it doesn't really have anything because it has no flax, and it doesn't get a scrap for belter comps inside it either. So it's just going to give you like basic stuff. Yeah, I think that's that for Jupiter. Final recap. NPCs spawn about every 10 minutes if you're alone. That means that's how fast you need to kill and loot them, and it is the ultimate limit on how much you can get per hour. You need plenty of PDCs to stop torpedoes and to quickly disable enemy ships if you get too close. You should always try to stay out of PDC range. Don't forget to set PDCs to target subsystem power. Maintain distance, kill enemy power, loot, repeat. Speed match can help with distance and with looting. However, do not rely on it to do everything for you. The target can and will try to close with you, even with speed match on, and other enemies can approach freely. Always maintain awareness. No NPC is worth your ship. Always be ready to abandon a target. Alright. Once you get 100 high-tech scrap from Jupiter, you can sell it to Tycho Station. When you do so, the station will refine it into 50 upgraded belter components, which you can buy from the Adjuvant store block. With those and 10 turret chips from the same station, you'll be able to build a mounted railgun, which should fit into the pit on the hull that the fixed railgun is currently occupying. And with that, you'll be ready for the inner planets. And that's it. Good luck.